This is HBR News number 386. Griner in most famous trade in the WNBA. Twitter is targeting women for layoffs, where we talk about the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I am your host, Brian Martinez, and I'm joined by, as always, my lovely co-hosts, Hannah Wallen, Mike J, and Dr. Randercam. On today's news show, we're going to be discussing some of the craziness that's been going on in the world, while also kind of trying to avoid the most obvious stories. So that you don't miss on any of the, some of the stuff that got, let's say, passed over in the shuffle. So, for example, we are not going to be discussing, oh crap, I had you know what, I even forget these main big giant stories, like Elon Musk, and his various leaks
and how he's become the main character of the universe, it seems, at least according to the news.
Exactly.
Or, you have to wonder what kind of movies they're going to make about this one day, if they're ever allowed to in Hollywood, I mean.
Well, I think it should be animated.
We're not talking about the crypto hearing, right?
Yeah, or that we're not going to be talking about those kinds of stories because a lot of people have chimed in. But there are still things that I think are very interesting. For example, we're going to be talking about the trade of Brittney Griner for the Lord of War, but not in the way that you might think.
Are we not?
We are talking about that.
I'm intrigued now. And so are you, audience. Stay tuned.
The fact that men are dropping out of the workforce at alarming rates due to concerns over the status that these like working class jobs offer. Elon Musk, yes, there is like an Elon Musk story, but it's just not the leaks or whatever. He's been firing tons of people, and apparently it disproportionately affects the women, which is a problem. Can't do that, right? And more. So stick around. It's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us on the patron-only show. I think this story was kind of doing the rounds, but I never read it because it sounded so stupid. But, for a patron show, it should be good. And here it is. This is a piece from the Washington Post. It says, Shark Week lacks diversity. Overrepresents men named Mike, scientists say.
I resemble that remarkable, and so does my friend Mike.
Oh, hi.
It's totally not a common name or anything, so there would be absolutely no reason.
Mike, you know what we have to do now, right?
We need sharks. Lots of them.
Big, great, white ones.
No.
Oh, boy. Yeah, so
no sharks.
We're going to be looking at this in the patron show, learning about the lack of diversity in Shark Week and why that has got to change. I'm okay. So yeah, if you guys want to join us in the patron-only show, you have to become a Badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into the Discord, where you will be able to participate in all of the additional viewed content that is normally patron exclusive. In addition, you could give it higher levels, and that'll give you more access to share your thoughts or views. So, you could be a part of the discussion itself if you give at a high enough level. Please consider joining us in any capacity. We welcome it. And in addition to that, I look forward to seeing you guys hanging out with us in the patron show area. So that is the Patreon stuff. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we have been yeeted from the internet, and particularly from the parts of the internet where you guys frequent, please go to badgerfeed.com or honeybadgerradio.com so that you can still find us and our content, and hopefully that'll work for you guys. And if you're watching us on Rumble or any of these other alternative media sites, first of all, thank you so much. We really want to have the freedom or have the ability to migrate away from YouTube if we can. So follow us on Rumble, follow us on DLive, Facebook, and Twitch.
Little incentive on the Rumble thing. YouTube has removed, I've discovered recently, like a shitload of my openers. And we may not be able to recover the original videos, but I have somewhere either the original sound files or at least my transcripts from the original sound files. So we will, over time, we'll be uploading to Rumble either remakes or whatever original videos we can get our hands on from those. So there'll be material going up on Rumble that is no longer available on YouTube because it's politically incorrect to discuss the weakness of presuming women strong and telling women they're strong without encouraging them to actually do the things it takes to be strong.
Yeah.
And it's been shadow banned since 2015 at the latest. It so pisses me off when all these like YouTubers with 1 million subscribers and 15 different sponsors, they go, "Oh, I'm so shadow banned. You need to support this channel." Says, "Oh, fuck off."
Yeah, we've been shadow banned for a long time. But these are just flat out deleted. Like, they're gone.
Yeah.
They've done it to several videos on my old channel as well. I went looking for something there not too long ago, and it was just gone.
All right, so I guess with all of that said, let's jump into the stories. So we're going to start with Brittney Griner. So let me hand the floor over to Mike J.
Oh, Brian, put that down. We need something to walk on, damn it.
Can I just say before we get started on this, like, I thought this person was trans.
I did too.
Have you heard her speak? Yeah.
I've seen some pictures that still have me questioning things.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like, I didn't really like my like Lindsay. She really believes that this woman is. She still believes this woman's trans. But I haven't seen any
trans investigators in on this.
Yeah, I haven't seen any evidence. But it doesn't matter to me.
There is some. But there is some reason behind that that may not actually make her trans, and that so this is something that Black female athletes have had to deal with in the public eye quite a bit, where they don't look neotenous as much as, say, a lot of the white girls do. And there are people who are not Black that happens to as well, but it does disproportionately happen to Black female athletes. That's one area where I can be like, I wouldn't necessarily say they're a victim of it, but it does happen to them. And I've seen that as an athlete, where I've run against Black girls from other schools when I was growing up, that people were like, that's a guy, and I mean, the same thing has happened with Eastern Europeans, and it kind of allowed Eastern Europeans to actually sneak men onto their women's teams, or to dose their women and girls with testosterone and put them on the teams. But this is just naturally occurring high testosterone. So it's very possible she can look like a man to you and sound like one, but be entirely female. She just may be high testosterone. So this is just a little caveat to that, because I don't want to accuse someone of lying about who they are without evidence, and just how they look isn't necessarily evidence.
Right.
You can see that in a lot of people that live in harsh environments as well. Like if you looked at the female police forces in ISIS, they didn't look very female either by Western standards. So it is a possibility, very distinct possibility for a woman who is very athletic to be, in particular, to be to look like a man. Now that's not to say that I'm saying she's definitely not trans. It's just if she doesn't come out and say, "Hey, I'm trans and I've been lying to you guys," I would not assume.
Yeah, right. No, I'm not.
Maybe she just doesn't drink all the estrogen infused tap water. Or maybe she's on steroids. Is that whatever they are? No.
Also a distinct possibility in athletics. Very distinct possibility.
Well, yeah, I was thinking that it could just be that she's taking steroids because everyone in the sports world takes steroids.
One way to control roid rage is to use something that tones down your extreme levels of emotion, like pot. Which isn't that what she was arrested for?
Together.
Yeah, it's all.
So it's a possibility she could be a steroid user. Then but again, women can look like men, especially to people outside of their demographic. Women can look like men without any of those factors being in place. So it's all speculation.
Yeah.
It's also just a certain body type too. Like she has an advantageous body type for basketball. Very high speed, very low drag, very, very slim. Not a lot of curves there, and that's
broad
exactly
shoulders,
what you want. Exactly. It's like the guy that recently just died, the swimmer guy that won all the awards. Like you looked at him and like his torso looked cartoonish. Yeah. But that's what you want for swimming. You want to be shaped kind of like a fish.
Yeah, these body types are very rare, but if you're going to see them anywhere, it'll be in athletics.
Exactly. It's like the one dude who had that crazy condition with his arm, like wearing one arm just grew ultra muscly, and he became just a champion arm wrestler.
I remember that guy.
You ever seen the guy? He looks cartoonish. He looks like the Coomer Wojak.
Yeah. Hell, I get accused of being a man on a regular basis, so. But not just by people who can't see me. Like, I've actually posted video and pictures on Twitter to discredit the allegation that I am a man, and had people come back and say that doesn't actually make you look any less like a man. So it's different people will have different judgments.
And now you've missed the boat to be able to get people banned from Twitter for misgendering you, because it's happened hundreds of times. And now that Elon's in charge, you can't do it anymore.
Oh, I haven't missed the boat. The boat was never available to me.
Yeah, right.
God Evolves
misgendered me.
God Evolves misgendered me all the time, and even claimed I was a trans woman. And at one point, I got sick of him, and I'm like, I'm going to see if this works. So I reported him for misgendering me, and I actually wrote like the additional comments you have, a very passionate defense of real trans women and what they go through, and how cruel it is for him to call a cis woman trans and use it as a slam when there are women who used to be men who have struggled all their lives with dysphoria and who get made fun of for being trans, and they still didn't ban him. He got banned for the N-word. He also, like, he was more than just using the N-word. Like, he went all out super racist on one of my followers because that guy defended me, and that they did something about. But you guys do know that Takes Down MRAs, like, who for a long time was one of my personal trolls. Like, everything I posted, he would comment on, was connected to the old Trust and Safety, and he's not anymore because they're all gone. But anything that I complained about wasn't going to result in any kind of I experimented with that quite a bit, and I really couldn't. I could report for the most obvious stuff, and stuff that it was like ironclad. This is an absolute example of breaking your rule, based in particular on your public actions in the past on the same thing, and it wouldn't get anything done. But it does now, so I'm like, okay, no more experimentation, because obviously if I report somebody for anything now, like it's a distinct possibility that they're actually going to get suspended. So yeah, it's changed dramatically. But that boat was not available to me back in the day, when it was a big deal.
All right, let's get into the story, Mike.
Well, yes, Brian. So, less than a year after being arrested and detained in Russia, after being caught with cannabis oil vape cartridges in her luggage, WNBA player Brittney Griner has been released. Earlier this year, Griner was sentenced to 10 years in a Russian penal colony after she was convicted of attempting to smuggle narcotics into Russia. But after assistance from the Saudi Arabian government, the WNBA player was released in exchange for another prisoner. The prisoner that the U.S. traded for Griner was Russian arms dealer Viktor Bout. Bout, often called the Merchant of Death, and also the quasi sort of figure that inspired the Nicolas Cage movie Lord of War. Excellent movie if you haven't seen it, by the way. Was arrested by U.S. officials and convicted of conspiracy to kill U.S. citizens and officials, delivery of anti-aircraft missiles, and providing aid to a terrorist organization, of which all he was sentenced to serve 25 years.
All right, so another shiny quarter for the shit that would have got Trump impeached, jar. It's really started flowing over as of late, hasn't it? It's not quite at the Titanic scale of the Alex Jones was right jar, but it's already big enough and heavy enough to kill a man or concuss a grizzly bear. And it's not as if it was ever about keeping up with the Joneses. But if Viktor Bout had been released under Trump's watch, let's face it, very spurious reasons, it would be cited as undeniable proof that that Trump is a Russian asset. And to be honest, they would finally have something on him that's at least sus. But when it happens under the Biden regime, it's not proof of the Biden regime funding two different sides of the same war like the American government's never done before. It's just proof of how much they love black women. Trans black women. I mean, again, not officially trans, but I don't know, trans passing, shall we say, if that's even a thing. It's if Brittney Griner was in a woman's prison, even a Russian one, then she wasn't locked up with them, they were locked up with her. She was more dangerous to Russia when she was in there than she ever would have been walking around with a vape cartridge. But the Biden regime brought her out so she can commit her crimes in the US instead. It wouldn't surprise me if she started a lucrative business in arms dealing herself. Now that she knows she can get away with anything, why wouldn't she? So there we have it. Two criminals have been released into the world, both of whom hate America. And now Russia is a slightly safer place, and the US is a somewhat more dangerous place, as are the various already war-torn African countries to which Viktor Bout will no doubt be paying a visit very soon. But Biden totally loves black people, you guys. And by black people, I do, of course, mean people who vote for Biden. Do you reckon they'll be using that in the 2024 campaign? They will, won't they? We set Brittney Griner free. How many black people on minor drug offenses have you let out of prison, Republican candidate? Oh, yeah, who's we? Does it include that mouse in your pocket called Kamala Harris? Because that right there is still offsetting your aggregate score by quite a sizable margin, dickhead. And now you've set a madman free. A madman with rivers of blood on his hands. And there's no telling how many deaths you're responsible for. Because, as usual, you don't have to see them, let alone acknowledge them. Maybe You should have just left Brittany alone.
Oh.
Oh, geez.
uh,
Honestly, the one thing that I want to point out is the thing that's been going around Twitter, and that is here. This administration has over and over and over again talked about how limited the public's access to arms should be, but they release Victor Bout.
yeah.
So obviously, it's okay if you're this merchant of death that has sold every manner of arms to the most evil people in the world, and created an environment of mass death, mass murder, massive attacks on the United States. But if you want to go hunting, or and not have to worry that you're going to be charged down by boars, wild boars in the woods, or if you just want to keep your house safe from people that might want to break into it, if you don't want criminals to have access to you and your family and your stuff in your home, like, you're bad, right? But these people can let this guy go, and it's worth it because we get back a pot smoking hypocrite who I don't understand how that's part of her training rules. They must have been relaxed quite a bit since I was in sports, but yeah,
No, I'm sure.
I'm just not feeling it. That's it.
I
Like, the comparison struck me, and that really hit home.
Yeah. I wanted to bring this up because there's like a elephant in the room. I think you guys know what I'm driving at. The fact that when the Democrats decided they were going to trade Brittney Griner for the Lord of War, which is what the Lord of War being what the Russians were asking for. I had to ask myself, why didn't they like hold off or fight to essentially, like, maybe get a better American prisoner? I mean, there were plenty. I know people have talked about this, this one guy. I can't
Paul
remember.
Whelan?
Say
Yeah.
what? What
His
were
name's
those?
Paul Whelan, right? The
Paul,
Marine.
Yeah, Paul Whelan, the Marine, exactly. And there's plenty of others, right? But they went with Brittney Griner. And I think the reason was just so that Joe Biden could essentially virtue signal about it, talk about how she is the best of us, and other things. But like, ultimately, what are they doing? They're trading a black woman, most importantly a woman, okay, for like some white guy. And what he's essentially saying is this woman, just by virtue of her being a woman and being black, and then maybe thirdly being like a WNBA player, because as a WNBA player, you're not just a regular woman, you're a woman that's shattering, boundaries and symbolizes, like, I don't know, some kind of feminist athleticism. Honestly, I wonder if like the WNBA isn't just some made up sport to virtue signal, and that because no one watches it, like, how many times can you watch like layup drills, because that's basically the whole game. And also, yes, that she's a lesbian helps, but I think that her being female is primary. And I think that it's essentially got a political, social value outside of the, what everyone is looking at, which is that this woman was simply traded. And they're trying to figure out why that matters. And I'm like, well, it's because it's a woman. And I honestly believe that. I think that's the primary reason, because it's a woman, and now we can use this to essentially, like, preach to the, like, to the American people, in particular women, again, about how special she is. And I think that, well, anyway, my belief is that's the real reason they did all this. Because it was politically
you think
useful.
about it, it's the Biden administration can claim to have done something for women because they did something for a woman. This isn't the way it works with men. If you do something for a man, you're not considered to have done something for men, right? Because men are not a collective, and women really shouldn't be either. It does, like, personally for me, it does absolutely not a thing for me that she's back. Like, I'm not even a fan. So, you know, I have compassion for the people that are trapped in Russia that don't want to be there, whether it's because they are prisoners, whether it's because they are men who didn't want to get drafted, whether it's because they live there, were born there and live there and they don't want to, but they can't get out, you know, whether they're political dissidents, whatever. But aside from that, like, this particular individual doesn't mean anything special to me over and above any other person in the world. And it's I'm supposed to be affected by this as a woman and decide to vote Democrat because they did something for women. Just like when they do something for well, they really didn't do anything when they passed a law regarding gay marriage because that's already been decided in the Supreme Court and nobody is contesting it. So it was really just theater. But you know, I'm supposed to be grateful for that because I'm bisexual. But that's bullshit too. Like, they do these virtue signaling things, and this was a virtue signal. They do these virtue signaling things for special interest groups that really aren't groups, and for whom the special interest isn't necessarily special. And the women that would appreciate this and vote based on it are already going to vote for them. So they don't even get anything out of it, but they can make themselves feel like they did. And it communicates to the rest of us that, hey, her gender means more than any other detail about any of the prisoners that are trapped over there. So it's essentially a boot on the throats of everybody who doesn't think this was the best thing to do.
Yeah.
There are almost certainly white American white women in Russian prisons. There are almost certainly American black men in Russian prisons. But they could cover all of the possible bases on the progressive stack by getting Brittney Griner out. She's a woman, she's black, she's a lesbian, she's trans passing, and she's a celebrity. So with one fell swoop, that's they made this trade because to the Biden regime, that's as valuable when it comes to getting votes from their already converted voter base as Victor Boot is to the fucking Putin regime. And that's a sign of the times if ever I've seen one.
Yep. And that's I think the main thing I wanted to point out was that this is clearly being done based in identity politics, and a lot of people they still fall for it. So we got to move on.
I've got one thing I'd like to say real quick.
Okay.
I've been holding on to this.
All right.
Didn't want to cut anybody off. I got a bit of a hot take here. When it comes down to, like, as a person, I really could give a hoot less about Brittney Griner. I don't care who she is. I don't care what she's done. I would encourage more people to use this as a, hey, maybe don't go to these foreign countries where, you know, you can be held for things that aren't such a big deal here, but are such a big deal over there for, you know, 10 years of hard labor of your life. That's kind of scary that, you know, 1/8 of your life could just disappear for having something over here that would be a slap on the wrist. That being said, I don't think this trade should have taken place. That's also not to say I don't think Paul Whelan should have been traded for this guy either. I don't think anyone should have been traded for the fucking Merchant of Death. This
Not a
was
hot
not a
take. That's
case
a
where
good
one
take.
person for one person, where this other person is going to go on to no doubt countlessly ruin more lives.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I really wish more people would focus on. But so many people on the right of this, that's all they seemed like. Well, it should have been this other guy. They should have traded for this other guy. Trump would have traded for this other guy. And I go, no, he actually probably wouldn't have. He even came out and said, no, I would not have done this. I would have sought other avenues to get these people free. And I probably would have done it. And like, well, yeah, Trump has done pretty good in those. You can always loosen some embargoes. You can add in some other incentives, which I think are much better than person v person, unless again this is for something that's roughly equal, but not in this case where it was. No. This wasn't even pawn for a queen. This was pawn for an entire chess set. And again, it just really disheartens me to see that a lot of people haven't thought too much about this.
It's like if Ted Kaczynski was caught by the Russians and was being held by them in their prisons. Like, who would we swap for Ted Kaczynski? No, keep him in a fucking prison for fuck's sake.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I don't think Trump would have traded him either. And I think he would have gotten everybody that he wanted free because he's a hell of a negotiator. Like, that's what one of the main aspects of what he's done all of his life is negotiation. And I don't think people should be surprised when it works well in politics. But I think that's not a hot take. I think that's probably the best take of all, is that, there shouldn't have been a trade, period. And that was bullshit.
Yeah. Agreed. All right.
Also look into this guy, Victor Boutmore, a very interesting life he's lived. And he was also totally a CIA asset, but we're not going to talk about that.
That would explain a lot. All right, so we're going to move on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. First, I got to read through some super chats. So Xeranx gives us, Gary Thomas gives us $5 and says, interestingly, Southeast Asian men have the inverse problem of African American and Eastern European women. Some of them are mistaken for women. Yeah, there is some genetic stuff with that. We're not going to we spent too much time on this first story. So
it's the neoteny thing.
Yeah. Asian men tend to be more, I guess, feminine. And just like how black women tend to present as more masculine. But yeah, that's just the nature of the beast. So
I was to understand that the only demographic in America overrepresented in mass shootings was Asian men. But I think that's one of those statistics that doesn't include gang shootings, so it doesn't really count.
Yeah, I guess It depends on what their motive is. Okay, so then Xeranx gives us $5 and says, I especially loved Russian media laughing at us and telling the truth at the same time over Grindr. Yeah, that was RT, right? Because that's the one I saw. But yeah, I think we should be laughed at, and also there should be rage over the fact that we even entertained this. So, but anyway,
this goes back to one thing that I've thought about time and time again, and I have absolutely no time to get into this, but it seems like so many of the moves that have been made by the people in charge, the people, our betters, our keepers, all these moves have just been made, and they always have one thing in common, one thread that ties them all together. And it's to make the U.S. look like a complete and utter laughingstock. Like this is some sort of weird humiliation ritual.
Yeah.
It's exactly what would happen if it were being run by a cabal of its enemies, as that rule goes.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to run this place into the ground. Okay, so we're gonna move on. Let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. Let me just make sure that I didn't miss anything from Rumble. No, I didn't. All right. So, yeah, let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. Meanwhile, I'm going to move on to the next story. And we're going to be talking about men dropping out of the labor force. So, published by the Federal Reserve Band of Boston, a new paper authored by Ping-Hui Wu looks at the rate American men are dropping out of the labor force. Long before COVID lockdowns, men, especially white men, have been silently walking away from work. Men without college degrees between the ages of 25 and 54 have left the workforce in higher numbers than other groups. Younger white men in particular were the most likely to leave work when their expected wages fell relative to their more educated peers. However, education is not the only factor. Women have not seen the same level of decline in their wages based on education, seeing a 32% increase in weekly earnings irrespective of qualifications. While some link this 40-year decline in non-educated prime working age men in the labor force to the contraction of manufacturing jobs in the U.S., Wu says that does not actually explain the decline over several years. Wu wrote the following quote, "For many workers, a job not only offers financial security, but it also affirms their status, which is tied to their position relative to their age peers and many social outcomes." Wu speculates that younger men may see a job with limited pay growth that could negatively affect their marriage prospects and social status as worse than no job. So if they have a job that they think is going to limit their pay growth and therefore, their marriage prospects and their status, that is worse than not having a job at all.
Are women more attracted to some jacked criminal dude who's never had a job than they are attracted to a guy with a shit job? Would that ever possibly happen? Are women ever attracted to bad boys? Is that a thing? I don't know. I just don't know.
You mean like that one prisoner, the criminal that got booted around Twitter by all the female accounts as like the prettiest mugshot they ever saw?
Oh yeah.
That guy,
green-eyed black guy.
Oh,
wasn't he like had a bunch of heinous charges against him?
Yeah, this terrifying person with all kinds of violent crimes and scary things, and everybody's, he's so pretty. Like, no, he's not.
Yeah, well,
what's wrong with you?
Just show these same chicks Young Stalin, same thing.
Oh my god.
You seen Young Stalin?
Yeah.
No, but
let me get you Young Stalin.
All right, so for many workers, a job not only offers financial security, but also affirms their status, which is tied to their position relative to their age, peers, and many social outcomes. So Wu speculates that younger men may see a job with limited pay growth that could negatively affect their marriage prospects and social status as worse than not having a job at all. Wu cites research showing prime age men who are not in the labor force spend twice as much time on leisure activities and sleeping compared with labor force participants.
Yeah, the mind boggles, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If it were any other specified demographic, i.e., women, namely women of this kind, women of that kind, non-white men, blah blah, then the conclusion would be they're not getting jobs because systemic institutional marginalization and whatever. And the solution would be we need more quotas across the board so we can get those poor buggers into the workforce. Might that whole situation give anyone a clue as to what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of we need more white men in the workforce, or even just men, it's never going to be suggested, let alone concluded. It wouldn't even cross anyone's mind because it would be a thought crime. Even in sectors that could perhaps use a few more men, like teaching, or homemaking and parenting, heaven forbid. I mean, not everything is a zero-sum game, but there's only a finite amount of jobs out there. And for every woman shoehorned through the door just because she's a woman, a man gets shoehorned out of the window just because he's a man. But that would only explain the phenomenon in workplaces into which women are getting incentivized on account of any of them even want to be there. Then there's jobs like garbage man, sewage worker, factory grunt, etc., that women just don't want to do. That would require some other explanation. And I noticed this is about American men. What are we counting as American men? Is it men born in America, or is it just any men in America? Might there be some other group or demographic that might be, dare I say, quote unquote, replacing American men gradually at first, but bleeding through the floodgates faster every year? I don't know. It's a mystery, folks. But it's what we can definitely say is it's definitely not because of misandry or oikophobia. We don't have to address those problems because they are not problems. They are not even things. Nothing to see here, people. Think of the women. Think of the dreamers. And don't even think of closing your eyes and thinking of England. We'll never be allowed to visit America, let alone work there. Carry on.
You know, one thing that really, if it seems like the story didn't quite get it, where he's talked about marriage prospects and identity and so on. I hate to say just progressives, but it's really been more of a progressive thing. They've spent, even though they have the unions, even though they have the loyalty of the working class, they have spent the last 50 years, like my whole lifetime, looking down on the working class, looking down on anybody who does out in the country work, farmers, hunters, anybody that's like
Laborers,
that, right? Delivery people, and then of course anybody that works in any kind of position that you don't need beyond a high school education to do. And they treat people in those positions, retail workers, factory workers, construction workers, any of those guys where your education isn't formal. You don't have to go sit in a classroom for it. Your education is on the job. You do apprenticeship, or you go to a trade school where your classroom isn't a classroom. It's a lot more like a lab where you're actually doing the work in order to learn the work, right? That kind of a profession, that's one of the most honorable things about men, is that they will get their hands dirty. They will learn on the fly. They will do whatever it is that needs done. They will get waist deep in shit to unclog something, or neck deep to unclog something that women don't even want to think about. Like fatbergs are not something that women are going to sit around going, gee, I wonder how that works. I wonder how that's taken care of, right? The railroads across the United States, none of that track, none was laid by women. Not one segment of rail. None of it was delivered by women. None of it was carried by women. None of it was molded in plants where women worked as the manufacturer, right? None of it was mined. None of the metal that made those was mined by women. None of that was done by women. And for some reason, we have an entire side of the political spectrum that sees fit to label the men that do those jobs nobodies. Are you kidding? Next time you want to go someplace, you think about the nobodies that mined and refined and shaped the metal that your car is made out of, or created the substance, the parts that are not metal, that your car is made out of, right? That if you're driving in one of the electric vehicles that everybody's like now deciding whether or not they hate, right? The guys that run the electric plant, the guys that do the work to keep power running to your home so that you can power your stupid little electric toy. Right? All of that. And of course, while you're looking down on those guys, while you're looking down on the guys that take out your trash, you're looking down on the invention of the toilet on International Men's Day, ladies, just be kind of glad that you don't have to deal with all that shit yourself.
Yeah.
They're commenting that the YouTube stream stopped.
Are they?
In
I
the
can
chat.
check real quick. I can check. Hold on.
I'm looking at it right now. It's still up.
It's still
Yeah.
up. Okay. That's
Quantum
strange.
Cat 76 at that.
Yeah,
Try refreshing because it's still running for
Yeah.
everybody else.
Working
Yeah,
on my
I
machine.
would refresh. But yeah, that situation, you know, maybe young men aren't going into those jobs because all of their lives, the way that they've heard people talk, they think they're going to be the bottom of the social totem pole, even if they earn a living, even if they can afford anything they want, even if they could buy her a house with a little picket fence and a 2-car garage with 2 cars in it and a television in every fucking room. If they think that she's going to be embarrassed to say what her husband does for a living, then they won't do it. And women aren't fixing that, because women are arguing for equal pay for unequal work based on the idea that they iron their laundry at home, right? Based on the idea that they take care of grandma, based on stupid shit like that. They're arguing that incentive pay, hazard pay, weekend differentials and shift differentials and overtime and stuff like that should not be paid to people who are willing to do the job that somebody with a degree in that job, in that type of work, doesn't deserve it more than a woman with a degree in some other area. That when they come into the job and they don't dress appropriately for the environment that they're working in, the environment should be changed to suit what they wanted to wear. In other words, temperature controlled.
Yeah.
So, and so on. They're arguing shit like that, and they're throwing men under the bus during that argument in order to get what they want. Of course, men are leaving the workforce. It's inhospitable. They're getting demonized for being in it. They're getting treated like anything they do is crap and it's not going to build their reputation. They're not valued, right? They're not treated as though they belong there, and they're not treated as though society appreciates any of what they do. Why would they do it? Like, all of the incentives for doing those jobs are taken away. Why would they do them?
Well, I do think it's funny and interesting that for most of our history, men could do these jobs, and that would be like something they could take pride in, and they would, in fact, be able to find a woman and marry her and start a family or whatever. So this phenomenon of men feeling as though it doesn't bring them enough status and success with women, and apparently it looks like it bears out in their, according to the article, that would suggest to me that perhaps something about women has changed, and that men are just sort of learning about this now. That's something that I thought would be worth mentioning, that maybe this isn't about men or their jobs, but it's about women.
There is quite a bit you could say about that too. Something about women has changed. There's a lot of things about women that have changed. I outed myself on Twitter already, but I'm dealing with recently being diagnosed as autistic. And the thing that got me diagnosed was not being able to communicate, literally not being able to communicate effectively with millennial women in my workplace. I can't understand them, and they can't understand me. We don't speak the same language. Like, we both use words, that are English vocabulary, and they have dictionary definitions. And when you combine them, those dictionary definitions should apply in the proper order, right? If something's a modifier, it should modify based on the dictionary definition of the word and things like that. But the whole thing breaks down when talking to millennial and Zoomer women.
Yeah.
It's just not possible. So usually, you know, like people of my age have been able to adapt. Like other women I work with tried to explain to me what I was doing wrong, and I didn't get it. I couldn't evaluate the situation because I couldn't understand what the women I was dealing with were trying to communicate back to me and what they were seeing when they looked at me. Or the fact that their mind would wander in about 2 seconds to 5 seconds, like in the middle of the first sentence, basically, when discussion was about work. And that really, really screwed me up. And a big portion of it is they speak emotion, and I don't.
Yeah.
Like, I understand feelings. Like, it's not that I have no understanding of feelings whatsoever. But that's not my primary vehicle for everything that I say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm completely lost. And I don't have that problem with the millennial men or the Zoomer men.
Mm-hmm.
They don't seem to have that same, and I don't have that problem with the Gen Xers. Other Gen Xers, like, if we're having a miscommunication, we both work on it until we get an understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But not the younger women. So there have been things that have changed, and I look at it, once I figured that out, I've kind of looked back, and you know, I've seen that older women, like the baby boomer generation, they had that same disconnect with Gen X women. So there's kind of a slow degradation of adulthood, and in my opinion, and logic and reason in women that went on fast forward about halfway through the millennial generation. And like Zoomers don't even speak the same language. Like Zoomers are like, I feel like an alien from another planet when I talk to Zoomers, like completely.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so the upshot is like, I guess women are changing and have changed, and it hasn't been for the better.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's, I don't know if that affects men in the workplace. If it affected me, it has to be worse for men.
There's a famous quote, and I'm reluctant to call it a quote because no one knows where it came from. It's often apocryphally attributed to Freud, but there's no evidence that he said it. No one knows who said it, but it's, before you diagnose yourself with mental illness, make sure you're not just surrounded by assholes.
That's
And
true.
of all the quotes I've ever read in the world, that's the one that really hit home the most. And it's so applicable to everything that's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I wouldn't have even considered needing a diagnosis if it wasn't for the fact that while other Gen Xers in my workplace recognized what I was seeing, they were all able to navigate it, and I wasn't.
Yeah. All right. Well, does anyone else have any thoughts on this story? Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next one. I do have some super chats, and let me just check Rumble over here. No, still quiet. It's all right. All right. So, Xeranx gives us $10 and says, anyone want to hazard a guess as to how this aids dissuading family formation? Family court, divorce laws, and trad/conservative willful obliviousness of male issues, amongst other things. Well, I do think that's a big thing, and I think it's important that, like, I point this out about men and how they're essentially, they can see the writing on the wall, and they have for a long time. And I don't know if women are gonna get the message. And again, because women are just going to keep on aiming for the top 5% of men, they probably just don't care that this kind of thing is happening because they're gonna try and get what they want. So, it's not good. Well, I guess we'll see. Thank you for that. And then I got another message from Xeranx who says, both Fresh and Fit and Courtney Ryan spoke to young women who have far out notions of what men should earn and how many exist for them.
Saw that.
Yeah, 100,000.
They were talking like hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, a six-figure salary. And it says at 23. So when they're like 23-year-old dudes, they should be making six figures, which is, I mean, that's ridiculous. Like, no way.
Boy, howdy, you want to talk about unrealistic expectations?
Yeah, right. I mean,
well, and the women are allowed to make those demands about men's figures, but men are not allowed to make any demands about women's figures, whether it be how she looks or what she earns.
Yeah. Oh, of course not. That's sexist. And yeah, but I mean, you can find shocking things that women think they deserve, especially these like Zoomer and millennial women. And I don't know where they get it. I mean, it's like not even on this planet. Like, I don't know where you think money comes from or what the economy is or what the job market is. But yeah, I'm not surprised at all. This again is part of the problem that this story is trying to, in its own way, bring attention to. All right, but anyway, we're going to move on to the next story. Thank you guys for the super chats and stuff. And let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. All right, so next we're going to be talking about Nick Carter, I think his name is. Who
is a name I haven't heard of in a while.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
From the is he like a Backstreet Boys? Yeah, Backstreet
Boys. Yes,
Backstreet Boys. He is a Backstreet Boy.
Yeah.
Totally not a boy band, you guys. They're a vocal harmony group.
They're more like the Backstreet Men now.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're a bit old to be called boys at this point.
Yeah.
But
so ABC was set to hold a special musical performance December the 14th. Hey, that's tomorrow. Entitled A Very Backstreet Christmas, which would see the 5 members of the late 90s, early 2000s era, oh crap, I can't say those words, musical harmony group back together for a Christmas performance, performing songs off of their album A Very Backstreet Christmas from about a decade ago. But plans for this special reunion have been sunk after a member of the group, Nick Carter, has been accused of one of the worst things you can ever get charged with, rape.
That's worse than murder.
In a tear-filled press conference with her lawyers, Shannon Shea Ruth alleges that 21 years ago, Carter invited her onto his tour bus and gave her alcohol before sexually assaulting her and then raping her, both taking her virginity and giving her a sexually transmitted infection. Ruth, who has autism and cerebral palsy.
Wow, that escalated quickly.
Yeah, it's 0 to 101. Claims that she was 17 years old at the time of the assault, which would have made Carter 21. Ruth further alleges that Carter then used his fame and power to intimidate her into silence. Carter has categorically denied all of Ruth's allegations. Michael Holtz, Carter's attorney, further combated these allegations in a statement. Quote, This claim about an incident that supposedly took place more than 20 years ago is not only legally meritless, but also entirely untrue. Unfortunately, for several years now, Miss Ruth has been manipulated into making false allegations about Nick, and those allegations have changed repeatedly and materially over time. No one should be fooled by a press stunt orchestrated by an opportunistic lawyer. There is nothing to this claim whatsoever, which we have no doubt the courts will quickly realize. End quote.
It's yet another story of rich, elite, straight white male who can financially afford lawyers versus unknown female minor, in this case disabled female minor, who can publicly afford lawyers. And you know, to the smear merchants of the gutter press, this doesn't sound controversial at all. It's an open and shut case. It's the indefensible end of the progressive stack versus the unquestionable end of the stack. But to those of us who reject the entire concept of the progressive stack, I have no idea what to make of it, and I'd rather not touch it with a 6-foot shitty stick. Both parties have every reason to lie, and both parties have every incentive to manipulate and silence one another. And even saying that makes it sound like I'm trying to appeal to both sides. But I'm not. I guess it can be interpreted that I am, but I'm not trying to appeal to either or both sides. I'm not even rejecting both sides. I'm reserving judgment because, as far as I can tell so far, it's all about the he said, she said bullshit. I think you better quit talking that shit, or you'll be leaving with a fat lip. Point is, I'm not doing this abstaining in spite of a mountain of evidence stacked against either side. This isn't like Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, where it's the evidence against Amber Heard versus the at best spurious claims against Johnny Depp. If it does go to court and we do get some evidence one way or another, maybe I'll chime in with some degree of confidence. Until then, all it is an illustration of dirty laundry. Very dirty laundry. And it's probably none of my business until then. It's probably none of my business ever. But as an illustration, it's at least instructive of the controversial times we live in. I shouldn't have spoken at all. I don't know why I still am.
I'll jump in here then. Like, one of the things that blew my mind about this was, so apparently this woman's been dogging him with these allegations for a while, right?
That's what it seems like.
Yeah, and it's gone nowhere, which that's a sign in and of itself. If there had been a solid evidence backing this case, and honestly, cerebral palsy does not make a sex act into rape. It's not an intellectual disability. It doesn't remove your ability to consent, and autism has to be pretty severe before it does. So those don't even, like, there's no point in mentioning those except to make the case more sympathetic, right? The thing that really blew my mind about it was Nick Carter was expected to perform for an audience right after his brother died. Like, literally right after his brother died. And hold it together and to give a good performance. And he did. Right? The whole band did. And I'd seen news stories about that and looked into it because, well, geez, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that in a million years. I would not have the strength to do that. And that's a hell of a thing. And these men did that. And their fan base is expected to judge them based on not a new allegation, but this time. She says it again this time, and their special goes bye-bye because she held a press conference. Like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? And Yeah, Xeranx says, I heard Nick and Aaron Carter was somewhat
That is
estranged.
true.
That is true, but that actually can make a death more traumatic, not less. That actually can be, well, now you never have a chance. It's gone. It's too late.
Yeah.
Right. And that really, I'm not gonna, there are things I could say about my own life that I'm not gonna get into. Because I've lost people like that where we were estranged, and it doesn't make it better. It doesn't make it easier. It makes it worse. Because now you have no opportunity to fix that. But in any case, just the comparison, right? The juxtaposition of dealing with that death versus how the public and how ABC deals with an instance of a long-standing allegation that up to now has gotten nowhere. Like, that's just something else is going on there. There's an effort at destruction, or there's some new thing that has come up in it that made them afraid, like of a media campaign against them or something, that they've done this. Because otherwise, like, it's kind of bullshit. It's like allowing somebody's stalker to control what they're going to do with their profession. And if something of what she has said is true, if there's a grain of truth in her statements, but she's been exploited by a lawyer all this time, and lies have been built on top of it, shame on the lawyer for doing it, and shame on her for letting it happen.
Yeah.
And shame on ABC for facilitating that. But if it's all just lies, if there's nothing behind it but consensual interaction or less, that there was nothing that happened at all, and she chose now to do this, fuck her sideways with a chainsaw.
Yeah, it's the timing that bothers me. I mean, in general,
and I could totally see it. I could see that, like, she's like, okay, well, if we spring this now, he just had his brother die under extremely weird circumstances, and if I spring this on him, they're totally going to cancel his performance, and maybe he'll finally be at the level. Again, this is all if I wanted to take this in the worst, most uncharitable light possible, and I spring all this on him, maybe he'll be in such a defeated state to just be like, look, you crazy bitch, how much money is it going to take you to make you just fucking disappear out of my life forever? Because I don't fucking need this right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a very distinct possibility.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're gonna move on to the next story. Does anybody else have any final thoughts
Show of the year,
on
baby.
this one? Okay. So let us know what you guys think about this in the comments section. And I look forward to seeing your thoughts. And now we're going to get on to what is probably my favorite story of the week. And I'm going to show you all what I mean. The Twitter saga continues after Elon Musk acquired the company 2 months ago. Twitter is now subject to several lawsuits. The company has disproportionately laid off women compared to men. So basically there are supposedly many sort of class action lawsuits that are being filed against Elon Musk, specifically because when he went around firing people, it just so happens that they were mostly women. A class action lawsuit that said that the company laid off 57% of its female workers. You got to get those numbers up, man. You got to pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers. Compared to 47% of the men. 37,000 employees were laid off in
3,700.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. 3,700 employees were laid off in early November as Musk looked to cut costs at the company. According to the lawsuit, in engineering roles, 65% of women lost their jobs compared to 48% of men. The lawsuit alleges that Twitter violated federal and California laws banning workplace sex discrimination. Several other lawsuits that Twitter laid off that say that Twitter laid off employees and contractors without advance notice as required, did not pay a promised severance. Another lawsuit alleges that Twitter forced out worked with disabilities by disallowing remote work and calling on employees to be more, quote, hardcore, end quote.
Okay, that stuff about layoffs without advance notice is bullshit right off the bat. They were all given like 2 months of wages beyond their termination, which is like twice as much as what's legally required in California, I believe. Elon had to pay you a lot more than you're evidently worth, by the way, but he doesn't have to let you in the building for any amount of time. He doesn't have to let you keep fucking with the computers for any amount of time. He owns the building now and the computers and the company. And you can see why he yeeted you from his property, because he didn't want to give you the opportunity to pull a Hillary and acid wash from the system all the evidence of the crimes you may have committed. He has every right to do that. And by the way, you don't have a right to commit crimes, ladies and blessed non-binary heroes, contrary to popular belief. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't get to break the law. And I'm not talking about the government collusion over censorship. That's the crimes of the government institutions in question. I'm talking about all the fucking CP and God knows what else you've been doing. And as for the ratio thing, what exactly is the threshold here? And I mean the threshold for legality, let alone suspicion. If he had laid off 100% of the women and 0% of the men, okay, that would be pretty sus. If 90% of the people he laid off were women, that might be a little bit sus, but quite honestly, not really. It wouldn't surprise me if many of them are diversity hires who've never done a scrap of work in their lives and were only ever there to show up for the occasional group photo to prove how diverse they are. So 57% of the women and 47% of the men. I'm surprised he kept that many of the women.
Mm-hmm.
How close to 50-50 does it have to be before the difference is negligible? Most statisticians would say a 1 to 2% discrepancy is officially insignificant. Surely 10% is negligible at best, and that's only with all things being equal. One of Elon's first criticisms was that the Twitter staff appears to be 10 managers for every one coder. What was the demographic makeup of those useless leeches in deadweight middle management? If more than half of them were women, then the question of why that many more women got fired is no more pertinent than the question of why that many more women got hired in the first place. Again, to me, it's irrelevant because it's frankly a negligible difference. But I'm going to throw in a wild stab in the dark here and say at least some of them were diversity hires. Mm-hmm. And if no one is allowed to complain about diversity hires, then you don't get to complain about diversity fires either. If you were hired just because of your vagina, don't be surprised when new management comes in and says your vagina is not what brings diddly squat to the workplace. Maybe, ladies, just maybe, you should learn to code.
Oh yeah, we can say that now.
Yeah, we can say that now. This is partly a result of the mentality that is fostered in women. By the way, the Title IX regulations were changed over time. They got used to believing that essentially 50-50 representation at a minimum was required, and if they weren't represented 50-50 in an area where they felt they should be, that women were being discriminated against. And if fewer women than men get a benefit or a bonus, then it's obviously discrimination first, unless you can find another cause. And even if you can find another cause, that other cause might be because of sexist reasons, and therefore it's still discrimination and blah, blah, blah. So they expect 50-50. But you really can't call it a layoff when the boss says, if you are willing and able to do the work, show up, and a segment of the workforce says, nah, I'm out. Like, you're not laid off. You quit.
Mm-hmm.
You are quitters. You gave up. Right? That is what happened. That is what these people did. They were not willing to do the work. They got pissed off that the catering service that they weren't even using was taken away. The super expensive catering service that they were not even using. They got mad if they weren't going to get wine on tap at work. They were not working.
No.
Like they were not doing a job. They were showing up and having a party and then going home, or they were working from a distance and all they were doing was kicking people off of Twitter. Right?
Yeah.
So
and we now have documents to back that up too.
Yeah. Basically, he's going to be able to prove that everybody that's not there now was dead weight. Right? And being dead weight does not entitle you to a job. Being female does not entitle you to be dead weight on the job. Right? And so this is not a situation where they're going to win this lawsuit. I think the lawsuit was maybe an effort at, or the lawsuits are maybe an effort at preventing him from releasing the information he's releasing now. I think it's a distraction. And of course, some of these women, many of these women, have figured out that because they have no job skills, they don't do any work, and it's basically they've been publicly outed as non-working employees. If they put that they left Twitter as their last job on their resume, nobody's going to hire them. So their only chance at having an income now is going to be to sue Twitter. So I hope these lawsuits just go in court, right? I hope they are a fart in a skillet, and that's as far as it goes, because genuinely they do not deserve to win this. They have done nothing to deserve it.
Oh no.
And Musk has done nothing wrong here.
No way.
But, the Sandy Hook parents didn't deserve to win either. I'm slightly worried about how much they're gonna. Cause I know Alex Jones can't afford $1 billion, but Elon Musk can. So, I given how corrupt the courts of any given Western nation are at this point, I worry a little bit about it. It depends what judge they're going to get, but they could charge him with $100 billion, and he would be able to pay it.
Yeah.
Isn't there something?
Also
isn't
be
there
able
something?
to appeal the decision.
Isn't there something in the 8th Amendment about not charging excessive fines in a court of law?
Yeah, there is. And I isn't
we seem to have made
Jones
up a lot of new laws
appealing
for him.
Yeah. Isn't Jones also appealing that verdict though? I mean, it's not over,
definitely.
right? So, and Musk is even in a better position to be able to contest any ruling. If a ruling is unfair, he's got the lawyers already, and he can afford the lawyers. And he also has a huge platform with which to criticize the court. So I don't know. I don't think that they're going to be able to do the same thing to him. If they are able to do the same thing to him, I don't believe they'd be able to make it stick. And the Alex Jones case isn't over yet. So
I'm hoping for Jones, man. I really am, but I'm not sure.
Well, I don't know how far that can go. If it can go to the Supreme Court, then it becomes, if they can find a constitutional issue in it, then it becomes a whole different ballgame. And I would say there is every chance in the world that they're going to look at that and say this ruling was never constitutional. We can't allow it. Yes, what he did was crappy. No, it doesn't rise to the level of this. That kind of thing. Yeah. And I don't think that
he had opinions. That was the whole thing.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that I would reserve judgment on what risk the Alex Jones case puts everybody else under until it finishes, till he no longer has any further appeals, or until he stops making appeals, because that does make a difference. And as far as Musk is concerned, even if Alex Jones didn't finish the fight, I think Musk will.
One last thing I've got to add on. I've been trying to find the damn thing for as long as we've been talking about it. But the meme, it was like Twitter before Musk and then Twitter after Musk, where it's like all a bunch of girls. And I think the one thing that, a very simplistic take on that is just looking at it and going, oh, look, it's all girls. Now after Musk, it's all guys. But you look, and the tweet with the women, they specifically said, I believe, again, I'm trying to find it to corroborate this. But even if not, this is something that was true later on, that they were taking a look at all that, and she's like, oh, all my friends on the communications team or something like that. And again, you look at that and go, do you really need like a few dozen people? And that's, again, just the people that were, I guess, her immediate friends, enough to fill a room. So you bump that out to a company, that's probably going to be several times that. Do you really need a few hundreds people on communications? Mm-hmm. Of course not. Fire them. If they can't code, if they're just there because they have a degree in communications or a bachelor's in something like that, you don't need all those people around. Yeah. It's useless, especially when you're deciding to basically kind of be your own press guy. And then you think about that for just a second longer. Who would have all those degrees? Who would do all those things? Who would rather go into communications than hard programming? Say it with me.
Yeah.
Women.
First of all, though, don't assume that any one of them actually had a degree in communications, because most people working in communications, in media, do not. Like, I've worked in newspaper for years, and I got to rub elbows with television people, with radio people. I worked a little bit in college radio, but never regular radio. But it again got me into that situation of rubbing elbows with radio DJs and stuff. As long as you can pass the test that says the things you can't say and do on the air, and the things that you have to say and do on the air, you don't need a degree for any of that. And it's unusual to run into somebody who is a reporter or anybody at the reporter, photographer level of communications, camera guy, anchor person, whatever, like, that has a degree in communications. If they have a degree, it's usually in something else, and they ended up in communications anyway. Usually people in communications with degrees work in management, and the ones that work in management that have communications degrees are absolute drooling idiots. Just absolute drooling idiots. Like, they don't belong in any workplace anywhere, and probably shouldn't leave their homes without a helmet. Like, I have that's just from working in communications myself. Which I started doing while I was still in high school, because it's not that complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, and I was giving the kind of the maximum benefit of the doubt here. I'm not saying they all had communications degrees, but just, hey, I'm going to still man the crap out of this, even though it probably doesn't deserve it. But that was another thing you also saw Musk say, too, to basically everyone in the company. Even he had a special memo for managers. It was like, just because you're a manager, just because you're ahead of the team, that doesn't mean I'm expecting you to not do any coding or programming. I actually expect more from you guys if you're management. And that, I'm sure he bumped that down to everyone else. Basically, I want everyone here to be a programmer. It's kind of like, I'm going to butcher this, and some military veterans are going to be mad at me, but what was the ideal? Every Marine's a rifleman at the end of the day, no matter if you're, a supply or a cook or you drive a truck, you're going to learn how to use a rifle. Because odds are at some point you may be shot at and you should know how to shoot back. And if you're going to run a technology company where the main thing is programming, everyone should learn how to program competently because you may need to do that in the future. It's not even controversial sounding to me in the least bit.
Yeah. All right. All very well-made points. We're going to move. Well, actually, that was the last story. So, let me read y'all's super chats. I got one from Zaranx for $10. Yeah, I think this is where we left off. For $10. And it says, anyone want to hazard a guess as to how this aids dissuading family? No, I already read that one.
Oh, you already got that one.
Yeah, I got them both actually. So I guess there was. I do have some super chows though. Meredith
We got
G,
at least two of them.
Yeah, Meredith G gives us $5 and says HBR News 386. There was a time when you women would see the potential in a young man and invest in that. That's what my mother did with my father when she worked full time while my dad was working his way through law school. But then my dad returned the favor and put my mom through college because my family needed the earning capacity. Thank you, Meredith. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm getting at. I don't think women are... I guess when there's like instant gratification in some other men, the notion of like investing in a guy and supporting a guy while he's like pursuing his potential.
What a novel concept.
It's not appealing though, so to women.
So a lot of the problem with women is that it used to be that, you know, women's role in the home was kind of defined. You knew what you were going to do. Like when I was in school, I knew from my family that I should be prepared to work, that I should be prepared to have a profession, but that I should also look for a partner who was prepared to do the same thing. And we should be prepared to be a partnership and treat our home, our family, like a business as much as like a safe haven. And I think today girls are taught that they're going to get everything, and they're not taught that they should have to work for anything.
Right.
And they don't get that. They don't have a role at home other than queen of the house, and it's just, it destroys their ability to make relationships.
Yep.
They never grow up.
Exactly, and there's no social pressure for them to grow up. Like with men, there is. So if a man is like not, unemployed and he's at home all day, on welfare or something, no one respects that. Like he's basically going to deal with pressure to like change his life. And women don't have the same thing. Although I do think that's starting to change a little bit. But they generally don't have to worry about like altering their lifestyle. So, all right. Thank you, Meredith. That's a good super chat. Noba Fan gives us $5 and says, I'm curious about female group sympathy behavior. Ignoring the fact that this false allegation was made by the lawyer and not the woman in the headlines, this is referring to Carter, I can't seem to predict how other women and girls behave when one girl alleges abuse from a famous guy loved by millions of women without evidence, of course. I either see tons of women siding with her against the guy and mentally dethrone him, or the women will ostracize her, in order to protect their male idol. But it always seems to be either or, not without any nuance. It's just instinctual emotions. I don't know.
That's the tribalism of the female mind.
Yeah,
right?
I don't. Yeah.
And it's the rules that apply to anyone outside the tribe don't apply to someone inside the tribe. So they're gonna do that. They're gonna stand up for a guy because he's cute, or because they're a fan, or because they like him, right? There's going to be a large number of women that are going to do that, but they won't want to change anything about the environment in which he was accused. So they won't admit the Violence Against Women Act is bad, but they will admit that in this one instance, the allegation is sus, right?
Yeah.
And they don't think that it's fair that his concert got canceled, that his whole band had to have their concert canceled based on an allegation like this that was that old and that long running and that's never come to anything all this time. And at the same time, you'll have women that will be like, well, a woman said this, you have to believe it. And they'll demonize him and they'll pressure for these same kind of things. And it's one of the things I put out a video this morning criticizing what Candace Owens got wrong about false allegations. And this is a big part of it. Women cannot be trusted to deal with the situation, the false allegation phenomenon, because they only criticize false allegations against people they value, against men that they have a reason to like or trust or be invested in their welfare, and so on. Men on their side of the political fence, men that they're fans of their work. How much of the support for Johnny Depp was legit understanding the situation, and how much of it was, it's Johnny Depp, how dare you? We can't be sure, but I suspect quite a bit of it was because it happened to Johnny Depp. And I guess the point I'm making is you can't trust that women will fight against false allegations, but we do have to pressure women to recognize the problem for what it is, to recognize that it's not just this instance with this woman accusing this guy that you happen to care about. It's the law facilitating it. It's social attitudes facilitating it. It's encouraging it when it's a weapon for your side or to your benefit. It's exploiting it when you can get away with it. Until women stop doing that, this problem is always going to exist. And the men around them, the men that they care about, the men that they need, are going to be targets. And that's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
So
Me Too is kind of a microcosm of feminism in general. And what Candace Owens was trying to say was that Me Too was hijacked sort of at some point during its development to become a weapon against men. But that's completely missing the point. It was not hijacked. It's always been going to its proposed destination, and it's the same. And it's the same with feminism. It didn't get hijacked during the third wave or the second wave or the first wave. It was never hijacked. It was always going to its intended destination.
Right. And when you see women respond to something like this, the ones who recognize that something bad is happening, that, a man shouldn't go through that, this man shouldn't go through that, they're the ones that need to be pressured to understand that it's not just this one time, right? It's the social attitude of believe women. It's the social attitude of anti-due process activism. It's the laws being informed by that gynocentric attitude. It's the idea that we can subjugate accused men on behalf of victims. Accused men, wrongly accused men on behalf of victims. Just throw them under the bus. Guess what? Wrongly accused men, falsely accused men are victims. That is a crime. It's a violent crime.
Yeah.
You're asking for him to be kidnapped by the violent thug arm of the government, thrown into a cage, put through a gaslighting absolute hell of a trial, and then thrown back into the cage because you want a conviction, right? And kept there for years in an environment where he's going to face violence from the people that are in the cage with him and the people that are there to guard him. And he's going to be gaslighted in whatever perpetrator program he's put through, right? So falsely accused men, wrongly accused men, men who are lied about by women are victims. You're not sacrificing them for victims. You're sacrificing victims on behalf of perpetrators. That's what women need to understand, and they don't. Or if they do, they're not admitting it.
Yep. All right, so thank you for those super chows, Nova Fan and Meredith. And for those of you who sent us super chats and any other kinds of support, we're gonna go into the patron show now. And what I want to say, I'm just gonna speak to the patrons because I've been having some issues with Open Broadcaster software, which is why there isn't currently a patron show set up, because for whatever reason right now, till I figure out what the problem is, Open Broadcaster software is currently set, and I don't know if it was like because there was a patch or something, but it's basically currently set up to create a new after show the moment I give it the instructions to do so. So you'll have to wait until after my show's gone live, and then I'm going to put the link to the after show in the after show chat, which is, or not after show chat, but like the after show section of the after show section of the Discord, and you can just get in that way. If you can't get to it, or if you have some problem, you can DM me and I'll send it to you. So yeah, that's how we're gonna have to do things for a little while. I don't know. So thank you guys so much for coming on today's show. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications so you know when our streams go live. And be sure to comment and share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you all in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.